Kaia. I love you. Hi. Oh my god, you're so cute giving the intro. I was like this, yeah, so agree. Like,
I
oh,
was like,
she's so
you know,
smart.
smiling when I was like waiting for your face to
Yeah.
pop.
Well, because I was like, clicking it, like, I need to find a request.
I was like,
I've never
where's
done this
Charlotte?
before.
Well, thank you for doing this with me.
Oh my god, of course. I love the book. I need to read more, and you've been inspiring me to read, so I'm so happy that I like
That's the
loved the
best
book so
compliment you could
much.
ever give me, but thank you for reading it. I was like, I know it's a long book. I gave you,
I know
by the
she
way, when we were
prefaced it
gonna do
because she
this,
knows that I don't read. She was like, I mean, I do read, guys. I'm
I was
a
like,
good reader.
I know you don't read, but here's a novel.
You were like, it's really good. It's about a young girl like this. I was like, okay, fine. And I loved it. I finished it in like 2 days. Do you remember we were texting about it? I was like, oh my god, have you gotten
I also was
it
like
yet?
pushing you to keep up with me because I was like, I need to talk about this right now.
Oh my god, it was amazing. It was so sad though.
I know. So thank you for coming on and for doing this with me.
Of course.
I have some questions for you.
Ask away.
I was gonna say, was it your first time reading the book? I take it it was.
Yes, it was. I heard
Will
about
you read
it before,
more now?
Of course. It's my favorite type of book too.
Yeah.
Because it's modern, but it talks about, you know, issues that have been around forever.
Yeah.
And highlights like even, you know, older books that have the same issues and stuff. So it was really interesting that it was like, okay, this easily happened yesterday, but also 100 years ago, you know?
These issues have been happening forever, and they haven't always had the place to, you know, be voiced. So I think that's why I love the book so much. Did you feel a sense of frustration in the moments where you feel Vanessa trying to justify the relationship?
Oh my god, completely. You're like screaming at her. Like from the get-go, from the first time he looked at her weird and like touched her knee weird, I was like, what? Fuck no. You know what I mean? Like immediately you go, what the fuck are you doing? It's like,
yeah.
And it's sad too. It's like you kind of feel, I mean, at least for me, like I was so like almost catching myself getting like mad at her for not doing anything. And then I was like, wait, that's not right at all. Like, and then I felt kind of guilty about it. It's like, it was a whirlwind of emotions because you're just like, it's so sad. Like this poor girl is so young and she just doesn't understand it yet. You know what I mean? But it's like, all you want to do is be like, older sister her, you know, you want to mom her and be like,
exactly.
Stop, like this isn't okay, like this is gonna fuck you up for the rest of your life, you know,
because you're looking at it from an objective standpoint, and
yeah,
then
from the outside.
When you're reading and seeing her thought process, it's a really interesting way to tell like an abuse story like this from the victim's point of view, because you see the way that she justifies it in her head and you want to grab her, but you also don't know like what her process is until the end, so you kind of just have to allow her to go through it
completely. And it's also, it's like she herself doesn't even, you know, realize that she's a victim for oh my god, like 20 years, you know what I mean? So it's like you have to kind of sympathize with her more, you know, like very, very, very objectively of like, okay, I'm just going to understand this with her and like go through this process with her as she's, you know, switching from older to younger and stuff, rather than
meanwhile, all you want to do is just be like,
no, don't do it, walk away from him.
I know, and you just want to hold her and like give her love and all of that. Did it give you a different perspective on your own experience as a young woman, you know, hearing someone else's recount of the story and like the way that her mind was working as a young woman?
Completely. I think, you know, I want to say everybody, but I don't know if it's everybody. I'll speak for myself and you know, for you as well, is like growing up in a city like Los Angeles, you kind of tend to grow up very quickly and you're surrounded by all older people from such a young age, and it's just, it feels so natural. And like, because of, you know, my surroundings, I always tended to like, you know, date older guys or hang out with older guys or like find myself attracted to older guys and stuff. And like, I always had the mentality till I was probably 18 of like, I'm an old soul. It doesn't matter that I'm young, I'm older, it doesn't matter. And then it's like, I turned 20 a few months ago and my little brother is 17 and I'm just like, if anybody over the age of 20 tried to flirt with you, I'd fucking kill them. And it's like, you know, and you get a different perspective because I'm like, it's really crazy. It's like you don't think certain things can be kind of deemed as inappropriate or unacceptable or something that, you know, might end up being traumatic or like sticking with you for the rest of your life when you're that young, because I was so like, oh, I'm
I think you know
older,
everything.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I'm like, I'm cool. I'm like, they like me because I'm special. I'm special. And it's like, I found myself saying like some of the things, like
That you
remembering
never
myself saying the things
reconnected.
that she was saying of like, but I'm special. He said it's only me. Like, we're actually in love. You know what I mean? And like, I
It really
just,
gives you perspective when it's
yeah,
not your own experience, and
completely.
it definitely makes you like rethink a lot of the things that you heard yourself saying at that age, you know,
Yeah.
writing it at that age, you're,
No,
especially
completely.
when
Because you're
you're
like, wait,
older
I
and you
wasn't
look back
special.
and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
That it's like,
yeah,
no, it's like that. It is inappropriate to have a relationship with someone that's 15. Like, even just, it's like, you're still a kid. And you look at kids that are like now that age and you're like, oh, you're a kid. Like, you're not an old soul. Like, you're a kid. You know what I mean? So it did bring a lot of like, whoa, like, that's crazy. I looked at it a completely different way. And now it's like, maybe that wasn't appropriate. You know what I
it made
mean?
you
And
very
like,
protective, I
yeah,
think, over women in general,
completely.
but especially, you know, just the power dynamic between, you know, the age differences as well as him being her teacher and being
Yeah.
42, and the way that she really wanted to write it and experience it as a love story,
Yeah.
when even she knows and the readers know that that was not in fact what it was.
Completely. And I think that that was kind of like a part of his way of like getting to her, giving her all the books and like making her read Lolita, and this was like, he
Right,
knew how obsessed she was with Lolita and like all of the love stories and the this and like the, romanticizing things that could be deemed as very inappropriate and controversial. And that was kind of his end of like,
right.
she's gonna fall in love with me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm also her teacher, I'm smarter, I'm wiser. It was like a whole bunch of
And
things.
that absolutely ties into this idea of like psychological grooming.
Yeah,
Is such a
completely.
in life, in books, I mean, it's just constantly coming up. And you know, she sees it as love, because she actually says this great quote that I have. She says, to be groomed is to be loved and handled like a precious, delicate thing. And I think in his process of grooming her, because she had never been in love before, this all this attention she was getting, all this love she
Yeah.
was giving her books. But she even says a quote about the books, like, I realized he was giving me, I thought he was giving me my own lens to see the world through, but he wanted me to see the world through his lens.
Yeah.
So it's like this shaping of her mind, seeing her vulnerabilities and playing into them,
Yeah.
is such a toxic and dangerous thing when you're, you know,
Completely.
at any age really for a woman. But
Oh, completely. It's like the age difference it's one thing on its own. The psychological grooming aspect of it was really like getting into this, and into Vanessa's mind and like and just manipulation on another level. And it was probably so confusing for her. And like, it's everybody, even like when you're 12 or 15 or however old you were and you have like your first little peck in a game, you're like, oh my God, I'm in love with him. You know what I mean? It's
right,
very easy for somebody without any life experiences to snap like this and feel so, such a strong emotion, even though it's like obviously not real and
no,
not a real situation. It's just
yeah,
like every role kind of played into each other, like the power role and the abuse of that, and then the way he groomed her and like made her believe that it was like he was this fucking angel and like
yeah,
that he's so perfect for her. Like that was a part of it too, was like it wasn't just like, he made himself seem like a king in a sense, that she was like,
yeah,
I need to be with this guy. I need him to like me. I need him to like me. You know what I mean?
of course. And I think like the for me the part that just like hurt me the most and I thought was like the most disturbing was that, you know, he wants her to be a child and she thinks that he sees her as an adult and that's why
Yeah.
he's in love with her. And you know, when he buys her the little girl pajamas
Yeah.
the night she sleeps at his house, like that to me just felt so wrong, because I think in her head she's like, oh, the reason he's in love with me is
It's
because
because I'm older.
sees me as older.
Yeah.
But throughout the book you get these little hints of like
No,
him
it's
actually like,
pedophilia. Yeah, that he's like views her as a child, and that's what he likes about her. And it was the same with the other girl that came out. You know what I mean? And like the more stories that were told, is they were all children. That it was like
right,
that was his thing, and that was really sad too, because it's like you kind of I think that you kind of, at the beginning of the novel, at least for myself, you kind of want to root for the fact that like maybe it's just her, maybe she looks super old, maybe it's this, but it's like every single maybe gets proven wrong like instantly. You know what I mean? That it's like, no, that's scary and bad and manipulative, and he's done it multiple times with other children, and it's like, it's just, he's such a bad person, and it's
Even
like,
the way that she views the other victims, like later on in life, is
yeah,
upsetting because, you know, you'd hope that women would, you know, come together and like grieve together and experience this together and get that insight by talking about it.
yeah,
But she was very actually quite protective over him,
yeah,
and didn't want to see herself as a victim, so didn't even identify with these other women who were coming
yeah,
up.
and like judge them and didn't believe them at first.
Yeah.
But I understand it though. I understand that mentality of also not just plain out not wanting to be a victim, you know what I mean, and not wanting to take that, like, it was such a long period of her life, this guy. Like, it started when she was 15, but they were on and off still seeing each other. He was on her mind 24/7 for so many years, like until she was an
Years
adult.
she engaged in
Yeah,
it, at least kept in touch with him. And, you know, this idea of victimhood, like she refuses to categorize it as abuse.
yeah,
You know, because it is a fiction book, like this novel kind of affects your understanding of victimhood, and it gives you a different
yeah,
perspective where you start to have sympathy for, you know, the reasons why someone might not want to consider themselves as a victim
completely.
uh, for a long time until they can really get the clarity. And even then it's like it is heartbreaking because she wants to be able to tell her own love story, and this was like in her head for a long time the love of her life. So I
Yeah,
think, you know, she has a quote about just the fact that other, and I'll have to find it, but the by admitting it as abuse, it would take away her personal experience
yeah,
of the love that she actually felt from it.
yeah. And it's just, I just, it was such a, it wasn't just like a one night thing that, she would be able to process and mentally process and like deal with that one night. You know what I mean? It was such a long period of time. I feel like admitting that she was a victim is admitting that the entire time that she knew him, she was a victim, which she was. And it's like, it just it kind of takes a whole chunk of her life out, and it's like, that was fake, what you were feeling, and that was bad, and you were a victim and you were
I think, yeah,
abused.
she
It's like,
feels discredited by being
yeah,
labeled as a victim, and she doesn't. She said like she eventually feels comfortable calling it abuse, but even hearing it from someone else's mouth, the word suddenly becomes the most disgusting thing to her, and she can't bear to hear it.
yeah,
Uh, she feels like it strips her of all of real emotions that she had as a young woman, you know, being groomed and gaslighted by this 42-year-old man who, you know, and I think like the biggest thing for me is she has to understand that it wasn't her responsibility to say no and to, you know, he was the older person. It was
oh, completely. She had no responsibility in it, and no sort of like fault in anything whatsoever. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm trying to close the door. It wasn't, this house is fucking ridiculous. It's like every door is like a door to break your fingers on. What was I saying? She has zero part to play in everything. But I also think, one of a quote that I remember, I'm forgetting the exact one. I don't have anything written down, but it was something along the lines of like kind of justifying that it wasn't rape, that it was just like, it wasn't that, it was consensual, she was into it, whatever, that it was like
she
all
says,
these.
I have the quote, she says, the difference between sex and rape is the state of mind, or is consent.
Yeah, that's the one.
Um,
And I
which,
was just like,
yeah,
I feel like it made me kind of think that her accepting that she was and is a victim, she's like, it makes her probably feel so stupid, because she's like, I didn't say no, I did it, I slept with him, I was obsessed with him, I went to his house. It's like, you blame yourself and you keep going and going and spiraling of
right. And then she has
like,
to
what did I do?
and deal with, you know, now she has to process getting
Yeah,
raped and the fact that it
yeah,
was not
that the
consensual.
entire relationship was just wrong and that she was under, you know, she was being groomed and under manipulation. It was just like accepting that, I think, was her final, you know, like one of the final things she like had to face head on. Because even like when the girl came out and this and that, and she was like asking herself questions, it was still kind of like, am I? No. You know what I mean? It was very much so like pushing it away, but it's like accepting that everything happened was legitimate and was bad is just connects all the dots of like, what did I do? Like, oh my God, like I it's my fault. I did this. Like I shouldn't have let him even touch my knee. I should have told somebody right away. You know what I mean? It's like you think
And
of all the things you could have done.
no one can, you know, predict how they're going to react when something like that happens, and
Yeah.
there is no wrong way to react when something traumatic is happening to you. And I actually forgot to say this, but Kate Elizabeth Russell, who wrote the book, later came out saying, you know, this was based on real life events that happened
Yeah.
to her. She did release it as fiction to distance herself from the story.
Yeah.
And her, as a grown woman, it is hard, you know, to retell these stories in their entirety and truthfully, because it can feel very vulnerable. You can feel, again, like you're having your experience stripped. And I do think a big part of the fear of women speaking out is that you will then only be labeled and tied back to this one experience.
Yeah.
I hope that women know that that is so not the truth, and that is completely the wrong idea to have. It's like, we can stand together, we can lift you up, and we can help you.
Yeah. That it's like you know, you obviously make your own decision, only you, of how you want to handle any sort of trauma in your life. But it's like, if you come out, every fucking woman nowadays especially will support you and hold your hand. It's like, I think we've seen and read and heard enough stories of women not being believed, and it's just like, it's time. And I don't know, I think that this book, like going along, you know, with the whole Me Too movement, was special and eye-opening because it told a story from a very different point of view of somebody for the entirety of the book not even, you know, believing it and not even thinking that she was a victim and not even thinking that he did anything wrong, and just being so sure in the fact that she was in love with him. You know what I mean? And we never really hear those stories of like the brutal truth of like what is also abuse. And it's not like, you know, A plus B equals C of easy, like, okay, that is wrong. It's like, it's very obviously wrong, but to the person itself, it doesn't feel like it's wrong. And I feel like this book, you know, above everything, can maybe educate, you know, people and young girls a little bit too, of like, okay, like that isn't appropriate. This isn't okay. Like, I know this, and I, you know, now it's in my head, and like I if I go through something like this, I have gone through something like this, if this, whatever, like I'm gonna be supported and it's gonna be okay. It's like, it's a very, I found the book sad, but also like important and educational.
And what makes the book so special is that it is told from a victim's point of view, you know, and
Yeah.
it does tie a lot back to Lolita. They talk about Lolita a lot in the book. But Lolita was super controversial because you sympathize with the narrator, who is the person in power in the book. And that's why this book is so different, because you're actually hearing it from the victim herself.
Yeah.
And, you know, while Vanessa does think that she's in control a lot of the time, it kind of separates her from Lolita, and she even says that, like, she feels like the difference between her and Lolita is like, she knows what's going on and she's in control. She's not.
Yeah, and she always said that. She was like, yeah, but I'm not a victim. Like, I know exactly what's going on. That's the only difference. But like,
right.
Besides that, she compares herself to Lolita 24/7. The red hair, everything, and thinks that that's their story, that it's this romantic love story, that is their.
And Lolita is, you know,
huge ending.
romanticized a lot of the time in a very problematic way.
Yeah.
It does sometimes lead to young girls viewing a relationship like this as something to, you know, inspire a new love for them, and that is
Completely.
so not what it should be. And, you know, when she's older, I pulled a quote from the book. She says, "What conclusion is there to draw besides the obvious? He is Humbert and I am Dolores." So she's saying, like, in the end, she realizes, like, I wasn't different because I was.
Yeah, I wasn't different. I wasn't special. It's the same thing. I just romanticized it and like didn't know. Absolutely. She didn't know. Wasn't it like, how could she have known? She was 15, you know? But Lolita, it's like, it's such an old book. So it obviously, like, you know, there was no such thing as people coming out about people in that sort of way that it is now today. And I know, you know, if that book came out today, it wouldn't be okay. It's so, it does glamorize it glamorizes, you know, pedophilia on another level. But it was super important to this book, I think, that she related to it so much but didn't even realize like the negative side of it till she was older. You know what I mean? Like when she was a kid, like, oh my god, I'm Lolita, he gave me this because he's Humbert and he's this and I have red hair and this, but like she thought it was great. You know what I mean? Like she thought it was amazing, and then she slowly realized that like, oh my god, okay, I am a little bit different, like it's totally fine, I'm special, I'm not like her, I'm not a victim. And then she got older and she was like, no, we were the same and it was bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
so it's
and
like
insight into it, I think, as she matures and can look at it from a bit more distance and can let go of this, like, you know, glamorizing her first love. And,
yeah,
you know, Vanessa and Jacob, they both reference Vladimir Nabokov so much.
yeah.
And do you think that that changed the way that their relationship progressed? This constant kind of like Lolita dream that they had?
I think so. I think it was more her obsession with it kind of affected everything else around her. You know what I mean? And she didn't even realize it. Like we were saying before, that it's like, you know, her dreaming about this and like just constantly talking about it, bringing it into a relationship and having it be such a big part of her life kind of, I think, for her made the relationship more maybe exciting. I don't know the right word, but more like it felt right to her in the moment of like, no, it's fine. It's justified. This is great. Like this is in our relationship.
The book
You know
that
what I
I
mean?
love and that I admire, and that's why I think there is
Yeah.
like books do hold so much power and so much space in people's minds, and so I think it's
Yeah.
so important to like understand whether a book is a cautionary tale or a love story or what it is. And I think this book is absolutely a cautionary tale of what can happen
Completely.
when you romanticize these inappropriate relationships and victim blaming and power dynamics and
Yeah.
you know the complexity of emotional and, you know, sexual abuse on women especially.
Yeah.
So this like
Completely.
power, it does, I think later in her life she does kind of come to terms that the power dynamic, I think, is interesting to talk about, is like the fact that he was an English teacher when she was 15, you know.
Yeah.
And she wants to believe that she has the power and articulates that acknowledging his power takes away her experience and, you know, her story, the way she remembers it. Like, how do you feel like her saying that admitting he was in power took away the way that she wanted to remember this experience?
Well, I think having the power being taken away in that sense made her feel small and stupid and disregarded. And I don't know, I think that throughout the novel he abused his power so continuously, and then, you know, at the end when they met up and all this was happening, he was very, very weak. And it was like every aspect of him. Physically, he was really weak and like out of it and looked old and haggard, and also mentally, like he was so scared and sad and freaked out and was lying and was freaking out.
I think for the first.
Yeah, and I think that to me was when that dynamic of power kind of switched in her mind of like, I have the power now. Like I'm the one that can ruin his life. I'm the one that can do this. He's weak in front of me, begging for me not to do something. Like, is this how it's always been? You know? And I think it's like you look back to the beginning of the novel, countless amount of times he was like, we can't tell anybody or you're going to get in trouble too. We can't say anybody did like this or you're going to get expelled. You're going to be this, like,
you know, kicked out of school alone.
Yeah, no, completely. It was like what he said was right. He got her kicked out, and it's bad and it's horrible. And it's like, I think though for the longest time she had this mentality of like, he is so in power, and he was abusing his power. But it's like when she got older and saw him like that, I feel like it switched of like, I had the power all along. And when she was young, she could so, you know, like that's why I think it's like that feeling of confusion and regret of like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do this? Is like everything comes back in the sense of like, I could have just told my mom or like a teacher and like really, really like done something this, but it's like, no, she couldn't have. Like he had her under, you know.
And the perspective that you get through life is not something, you know, you can't skip ahead and learn lessons.
Yeah.
You have to unfortunately learn.
No, you have to go through it.
This was such a tragic thing for Vanessa to have to go through, and you know, for everyone. And it's not a new concept that's being written about or on the news. Like, this has been happening forever. It's unfortunately happening every day, and each experience is unique to the girl involved. And I think that's why there's so many spaces for these women to tell their stories, because no one can tell you how to feel, how to react.
No, and no one can tell you what was traumatic for you, what, like, you know, no one can tell you how you feel, and it's only you. It's how you went through that journey, how you choose to handle it, how you know, want to be, and it's just, you know, the whole aspect of, like, this whole book, she was kind of controlled by something and suppressing her, and by so many aspects, you know what I mean? That it's like, was suppressed obviously by her teacher, was suppressed by her parents that didn't say anything when they saw the picture, was, you know, when her dean expelled her. It's like constant.
Was like told by the world, you know, your voice
doesn't matter.
Your spirit doesn't matter. And so I think eventually she felt so sad.
She was like, okay, it doesn't. I can't say anything. And that's, I mean, it relates though to our. That's why, again, like, that's why women feel like they can't come out. It's like, we, you know, there's so many things. There's 100 like things on a list that could go wrong, you know, in a woman's eyes, of like, they're not going to believe me, they're going to think I'm crazy, they're going to try and do this and this, like, I'm going to be looked at as this. And it's like, it's sad, and it's disheartening that, you know, that still is going on. It's like, women should be able to feel like they can come out about their experiences and be listened to,
and hopefully we reach a day where not one person, you know, makes them feel like they can't share their truth and their story. And I think, like, something that really stuck with me after reading the book was kind of wondering, you know, who would Vanessa be had she not had this experience? And like, from 15, you know, you grow and change so much in that time as a young woman. And so to have this kind of man who's really grooming and controlling,
and like the developing stages of your life,
you just can't help but wonder, you know, the things she might have missed out on, or she didn't even get to find out who she was without him. And that is, like, I think, such a big loss, you know.
No, completely. And it shaped her permanently, and shaped the way her life went, and every relationship that she's ever going to have. And it's really sad. It's like, you kind of you want to be able to think like, oh no, this, you know, like, she's gonna be fine. And it's like, you wish that she will be fine, and hopefully one day, you know, if it obviously it's fictionalized, but in the book that reading the book made me really think, like, fuck, he messed up this girl's life in such a crazy, horrible way, in such like a psychologically terrifying, like, long overtime way, that it's just like, how do you accept that? Like, how do you go through that? And also that he's,
I think there is no justification in that.
No.
But in the end, she eventually finds healing in that.
Yeah.
That, to me, was a beautiful thing, that, you know, you don't have to justify the relationship. And I actually think she was justifying it until she began to heal.
Completely. She was justifying her whole life.
And finally, I also, like, realized this as we were talking. You have a song called "Everybody Loves You" that actually should be the soundtrack to this book, that I think so well. And the Chicks covered it on their new album, and so that happened today, which is also crazy. And I just want you to talk about, like, writing that song and kind of what that song means to you and how it ties into the book.
Oh, I love you. Thank you.
My favorite song, by the way, that you've ever written.
I love you. Same with me. I don't know. I've never spoken about the song before. It's obviously a very, you know, it's a sad song, and it's a song that was so important for me to write. And I never wrote it for anybody but myself. I always wrote it, you know, just I wrote it in like an hour as a therapeutic way to me, you know, of me to get out my emotions. I just think, you know, every girl has been through some sort of version of that, one way or another. And you know, they vary. As we were talking about this entire time, is like, everyone's experiences vary from, you know, 100 million different types of things. It's like, women have to go through fucking shit all the time. And I don't know, I wrote the song about, an experience I had that was inappropriate and traumatizing and bad, and for a while I always justified it and always thought that I was being crazy and it was okay because he was so popular and cool and everybody loved him and it was amazing. And I don't know, one day I just woke up and I was like, no, that wasn't okay, and that wasn't appropriate, and that even though everybody loves him, and he's been with other girls that haven't said anything and this and this, and he's not looked at as a bad guy, he was still a bad guy to me, meaning he's a fucking bad guy. And I just had that realization one day of like, I just because my experience is different doesn't mean that it's not real. And I had just that realization, kind of like Vanessa, that was like one day you're like, wait a second, hold up, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't okay. And
That voice in your head that's trying
that was like,
you don't
that
want to
came out, that was like, you're right, you're stop suppressing yourself, like you were right about this the moment it happened, you were right about this a year after, like you'll always feel, your feelings are justified and your feelings are okay. And it's like, that's just kind of it. And I woke up and I was in bed and I just wrote the song really quickly, and I felt such an immediate like, I finally said it. I finally spoke my piece and finally, was honest to myself about something. And then I was never going to put it out, and I put it out. So
people
I love
heard
that song.
that song, it helped me in so many ways with a lot of things,
Okay.
so many young women. And I think that's why, books, music, however you choose to voice your truth, it's so
And
important
heal.
to heal from it, but also help other people heal from it who either
Completely.
have the tools or the ears that will hear them and will understand them and will empathize with them. And when you said, like, I feel like every girl to some degree will experience something like this, there's a quote
Yeah.
I want to read. It says, somehow I sense this was coming from me even then. Really though, what girl doesn't? It looks over you, that threat of violence. They drill the danger into your head until it starts to feel inevitable. You grow up wondering when it's finally going to happen. Not if it's going
Yeah.
to, but when.
When.
And that is
Yeah.
something women do. You grow up being like, not is this going to happen to me, but when, and what are the signs and
Yeah.
what to look
It's
for.
like you grow up, don't wear short skirts, like always carry pepper spray. It's like, and they even in Los Angeles, and I was in a very like liberal, cool, artsy school growing up, and it was very much like we teach girls to be careful. We don't teach boys to not
Right.
abuse girls. You know what I mean? Like that was what every human development, whatever class was like,
Really hope,
girls, you have to do this, you have to watch yourself, you can't, if a guy says this, don't do it. It wasn't like, guys,
guys, you need to learn
don't,
women
yeah,
respectfully and
and
well.
take care of women, and,
It
and
does. It puts such a
respect them.
idea in the head of young women when they're not thinking, is this going to happen to me? It's when and what did I do? And so I
Yeah.
think with Vanessa's trying to
What did I
just,
do wrong?
she's trying to think, what did I do wrong? I must have done something. And that is
Yeah.
something society cannot be implanting in our heads because it is not what you did wrong. It is completely wrong, and they have
Exactly.
responsibility. And sometimes, unfortunately, that does mean demanding it from them. And so I really appreciate people like you, people like, you know, Kate Elizabeth Russell, people who do tell stories that, can hopefully inspire other women to do the same, or at least
Yeah.
feel from it.
Completely. I just think, you know, self-justification is such an important part in healing, and getting that, feeling within yourself of like, I am okay, I am strong, and I'm right about this. Like that's as little as that, of like, what happened is right, what happened actually happened, and it was bad, and it wasn't because I was drunk, it wasn't because I was wearing short clothes, it wasn't because of this, it was genuinely because that person is a horrible person. That's it. If it, once you have that feeling of like, that is the only reason, I feel like
You
that's
have
when you can heal. And I also,
to
though,
leave
to get to
yourself
that feeling,
ability.
completely, but like to get to that feeling, it's like, that's why it's so important for people to support other people. It's like, to get to that feeling, you have to feel like you could be supported by other women and by men as well, and be supported by, the world and the times, and feel like you're not alone, and that it's your feelings are so justified. You know what I mean? That it's like,
yeah, well, like we have to, I think, as a society, allow ourselves to create the space for those people, because if there isn't, then they aren't going to feel encouraged to speak their mind. So it's like,
yeah,
we have to force a space for their experiences. We must, as a
completely.
society, give these people the space to talk and heal.
Yeah, but you also, it's like, I know so many people, I mean, myself included, that it's like, you don't have to say anything either. Like, it's your choice. You don't have to say anything. It's as simple as just feeling like if you wanted to, it would be okay. Then
And
that's all it is.
there would be people there to support you and to help you.
Yeah, and that you know, people believe you, and it's okay, and it's a normal, and it's sad to say that it's a like normal thing, because it's not a normal thing, but that it's a common thing that other women have gone through, and that, you know, you got to call these dudes out.
Absolutely. You know, you've got to sometimes, I think if that's part of your personal healing is telling your story, then I absolutely encourage people to do that.
Yeah,
And I
me too. It's
for
get your justice, man. Like, get your fucking healing, however you want to get it. It's like, that's the whole thing too. It's like, as a woman, and, you know, speaking to you and other women that are watching and everybody, it's like, dude, you can do whatever you want. You're a fucking girl, and that's great. Like, do what you want to do, say what you want to say. Like, don't censor yourself just because you think that a man is gonna, you know, judge you for it. So it's like,
accountable. Absolutely.
yeah,
Accountable. And I think victim blaming is something that fortunately we're gearing more away from, but it still does happen all of the time, and that is
all the time.
fun. I really,
I
I can't
hope that.
appreciate you enough for like sharing your
I love you.
and for being on here, and I'm gonna come give you a hug later today.
I know. Will you come over, please? Guys, Kaia was literally at my house maybe 2 hours ago.
I think I left just because she was like, should we just do it in the same room? And
I was like, should we go on like live stream or do it in the same room? Should we just face each other and talk?
So thank you for allowing, me to leave for a second so we could do this from separate locations.
Of course.
And
I know, come back.
And also, everyone listen to Everybody Loves You, Charlotte's version, because it's so beautiful. And
I love you.
This book, it will like just perfectly tie everything up.
Thanks, Kai. I love you.
I love you so much.
This is so much fun. Can you please send me more books to read?
Absolutely. You're always welcome back. Always.
I know. I'll come back whenever. It's so much fun. It feels like we're just having a conversation, but then there's people watching.
I know, you feel like you're on FaceTime, and then you're like, oh, wait.
Literally.
Okay, I love you more than
Oh my
anything.
God. Well, I love you so much, okay? Come back. Come over.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, well, thank you guys for watching. Charlotte has been almost like an older sister and best friend and just one of my favorite people ever. And she makes beautiful music, some fun, some sad, and yeah, I really appreciate everyone listening in on such an important conversation. I know it's, some of these things are harder to talk about, but books sometimes open up that space and allow people to tell their stories and be heard and be listened to and be understood. So we will be back next week with another book club. Thank you everyone who watched.